Let me take you back to an ordinary Saturday night, October 15th, 2016. Kim Reed, a mother like so many, answers the phone. On the other end, news no parent should ever hear. Her son, Austin McGeough, is dead. Now, ask yourself, how would your world shift in a single moment like that? Austin Joseph McGeough, just 21 years old, a proud member of the 101st Airborne. He lived for those jumps out of helicopters, for his family, for his girlfriend. A young soldier prepared to face danger, but not on the back roads of Tennessee. Already the story's set. A loving son, a proud soldier, and a phone call that cracks reality wide open. But how does a life so full get cut short on a highway? That's where the questions begin, where this story demands more than just a headline. As Kim clings to memories, Austin's laugh, his sense of duty, she's about to face a storm of explanations that don't add up. And trust me, by the end you'll be asking, who truly investigates when tragedy comes calling? So let's hit rewind and walk with Austin step by step as the events of that fateful night unfold. Because the truth? It's far messier and far more human than any official report would have you believe. Picture it, a small town, Pleasant View, Tennessee. Austin leaves Fort Campbell with fellow soldiers for what should be a simple house party. The host is just 18 parents out of town, the classic setup for trouble. But why did this night spiral so far out of control? Let me tell you a story. During the party, Austin texts his girlfriend, "If my friends need me, I will jump in and help if something happens." Not your average party update, right? It hints at tension, maybe something brewing beneath the surface. Family investigator Dean Marino later points to a bizarre moment: Austin taking a burst of 75 photos of a truck while lying on his back. That's not just odd behavior, it's a red flag. Was he documenting something? Or, as the technical term goes, experiencing hypervigilance, an intense state of alert common in high-stress situations? Now you might be thinking, was this just a drunken prank? But for Austin, the night's tone had shifted. The party, meant for laughter, was now charged with unease. And that unease, well, it was about to erupt into full-blown terror. What would you do if you sensed real danger at a party? Head for the door? Call for help? Austin's next moves would be desperate and, tragically, misunderstood. It's after 3 a.m. Austin's voice trembles on the first of several frantic 911 calls. "I have a 911 emergency, please. Help me, please." He's not calling from the party, he's running through the woods. Alone, terrified. Each call escalates. "It feels like they want to kidnap me," he says. "Honestly, I'm not insane. They want to kidnap me." Can you imagine the fear? The term here is paranoia, but the evidence suggests this was no delusion. Why? Because forensic audio analysis, the technical process of enhancing and dissecting recordings later, reveals background voices during these calls. Now, you might ask, was he hallucinating, or was someone really after him? Here's the setup. A young man, alone in the dark, convinced he's being chased. The conflict? Authorities would later dismiss his distress as drunken madness. But these calls are raw, they're real, and they're begging for someone to listen. Let me pose a question. If you called 911 in your most desperate moment, would you want your words dismissed as a symptom, not a signal? Austin's last call is chillingly calm. "I'm fine now, I found everyone. I'm all right now, good night." But within 14 minutes, his life would end on Highway 41A. What changed in those woods? Who or what did Austin really find? Let's turn to the asphalt ribbon of Highway 41A, scene of a horror no family should endure. At 3:53 a.m., 18-year-old Emily Prizik strikes Austin as he bursts out of the woods, waving desperately for help. Her 911 call is frantic. "I just hit someone on the road. Please, please, they are dead." But the nightmare isn't over. As Emily waits, another car barrels down the highway, running over Austin's body. And then, unthinkably, it happens a third time. 3 vehicles, 3 impacts. The technical term for this is multiple vehicular trauma. In layman's terms, grief and devastation compounded with each passing minute. Now you might be thinking, could anything have saved him? The answer, heartbreakingly, is unclear. Austin died not just from physical wounds, but from a sequence of failures of help that didn't arrive in time, of a system that couldn't protect him. Let me ask, how does a young man end up alone, fatally vulnerable on a deserted highway? This is more than an accident. It's a collision of circumstances and unanswered questions. As the sirens faded, the search for answers was just beginning, but the official explanations would prove as chaotic as the night itself. Just up the road, investigators find what they call a crime scene, the Pleasant View nursery. It's chaos: broken jars, pizza eaten, registers pulled out. But here's the twist. Austin's phone and wallet are neatly stacked on a desk, untouched amid the mess. This is what we call a staged scene in forensic science, when evidence appears deliberately arranged, not naturally left. But get this, no fingerprints, no DNA, no footprints. The technical term here is lack of transfer evidence. Imagine ransacking a place and leaving 0 trace. Impossible, right? Now you might say, maybe he cleaned up? But Austin was in distress, calling for help, not tidying up. And why would he leave his phone, his lifeline, behind after using it to call for help in the woods? Let me paint you a picture. A room in chaos, but a soldier's belongings stacked with care. It doesn't fit. Every mother knows the difference between messy and meaningful. This was the first major crack in the official story, but the theories that followed would stretch credulity even further. Enter Detective Jeff Landis, spinning a story that would make headlines worldwide. Austin, drunk and hallucinating, broke into the nursery, disturbed a wasp nest, and was chased by angry wasps onto Highway 41A. Sounds wild, right? But here's where the theory collapses. Austin's autopsy showed a blood alcohol content of 304 Ys. He was intoxicated and Percocet in his system, but there were 0 wasp stings, not one. The technical term here is toxicology report, and it tells the truth the narrative ignored. Now you might wonder, could wasps chase a grown man to his death? But add up the facts. No stings, no evidence of panic, induced injuries, and crucially no pizza in his stomach, despite claims he ate at the crime scene. The false narrative here isn't just a mistake, it's a smokescreen. Let me ask, when do wild stories become convenient cover for investigative failure? Austin's mother knew the wasp tale was nonsense, but proving it would mean taking on the very officials meant to deliver justice. The family wasn't satisfied. They sent Austin's 911 calls to a forensic audio lab. The results? 7 instances of background speech voices within range of his phone, not just static or feedback. The 2 clearest, one male voice says, "He's right here." On the final call, 2 words, "Tell her." This is what's known as audio forensics, using scientific methods to enhance and interpret sounds. Now you might think, couldn't it just be interference? But the voices matched the location and context. They suggest Austin wasn't hallucinating, he was being followed. Meanwhile, the nursery crime scene yielded 0 forensic evidence linking Austin to the chaos. No prints, no DNA. In scientific terms, absence of evidence where there should be plenty is as telling as a smoking gun. Let me put it plainly. The official story expects us to believe in invisible wasps, invisible fingerprints, and invisible pizza. Why? Because the real answers are too inconvenient. This is where Kim Reed's fight becomes every parent's nightmare, when the search for truth means going up against the very system meant to protect you. By now, you're probably wondering who's watching the watchers. Detective Jeff Landis, architect of the wasp theory, resigns after courts question his investigations. Judge David Wolf puts it bluntly, I have some real issues with the credibility of Mr. Cray. L'indice. District Attorney Ray Crouch goes even further. When asked if he could trust Landis, he says, "I would have to say no. That's not just a red flag, it's a siren." The technical term here is investigative integrity, and it's in tatters. Now you might be thinking, if the DA doubts his own detective, how can any family trust the process? Even Crouch admits the crime scene wasn't thoroughly processed and calls the wasp narrative stupid. Let me tell you, it takes extraordinary courage for a mother to hear these words and keep fighting. Kim Reed wasn't just grieving, she was gathering evidence, hiring private investigators, and demanding answers no one wanted to give. When the officials themselves start questioning each other, you know the cracks run deep. But for Austin's family, every admission is a step toward justice, however long and winding that road becomes. Here's where the story leaves us surrounded by impossible questions. How did Austin, a trained soldier, end up alone in the woods, chased by something or someone? Who were the voices on his 911 calls? Why was his phone left neatly in a nursery he supposedly ransacked while begging for help? Official statements say the death was accidental, caused by intoxication and a dark road, but that explanation asks us to ignore every contradiction, every scrap of forensic evidence. The technical term for this is confirmation bias, seeing only what fits a convenient narrative. Now you might wonder, does justice really serve families, or just close uncomfortable cases? Kim Reed's answer is clear. I've not only buried my son, but I've investigated his own death. Who should have to do that? Let me leave you with this. Austin's echo is more than a mother's grief. It's a call for truth, for accountability, for a world where every lost life demands honest answers. If you know anything about what happened that night on Highway 41A, Austin's family is still waiting. Not just for justice, but for the dignity every son, every soldier, every human being deserves.